so be careful what you say and do. It's all going to be on record, and I will post this to the YouTube site that I shared with you for the last two as well. So it'll be there if you want to see something again, or if you know someone who wasn't able to listen in today, let them know. So welcome to the webinar today. Today we'll be talking about, we'll give you a project update as we're hitting the home stretch of the project. We'll talk about details around what we're planning for training, what we're going to do and when it's going to happen. We'll spend some time in the Expense Coordinator Work Center showing you what you're going to be seeing if you're an expense coordinator, and of course there's always time for you to ask questions or air concerns you may have about the project and what you may be hearing out in the field from your own people. So we'll get started right away. So as I said, the project is hitting the home stretch. We're getting towards the end of user acceptance testing and wrapping that up, finding the last few things that need to be adjusted, fixed in the system. It's going reasonably well, and we're working on addressing the issues that we found during that testing at this time. On the training material development side, we've made a lot of headway lately. At some point, I don't know if I shared this, but when you take all of our manuals together, there's about 2,500 pages of documentation that needed updating. And as of yesterday, we're about 94% complete in getting the initial edits done on all of that. And 73% of the materials have had an initial review, and about almost 47% has had its edits made too. So we're well on track to having all of the manuals updated and available for you to look at when we go live, and also through the period in January when we're doing our training. So there's still a decent amount of work to do. We have our third test move coming up at the beginning of January. That's the last time we get to test the crossover process and make sure that when we go live weekend, things will work smoothly and we'll be able to turn the system back on when we're planned to do that. We have performance testing lined up where they load the system up to make sure it can handle a volume of transactions and people working in it. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about what we're doing in January for training in a moment. So that's where we are in the project. We're still on track for a February 4th go live, and certainly if any of that changes, we'll be letting you know right away. Oh, and by the way, Ruth Ellen Doyen has joined me as well, so if you have any questions for Ruth Ellen, please feel free to ask. And we were both saying we're glad we're not on camera because we're having an ugly sweater contest at our Christmas party today, and they are pretty ugly. So you're lucky you're not seeing them. So to talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing in January. So we're planning on having open lab sessions. These are sessions where you can come in with your work and have us down here and ask specific questions. First off, actually, the first thing you'll have is on January 2nd, a sandbox environment for version 9.2 of Vision will go live. So you'll be able to go in and take a look at it, see what's going on, try your work in there, and if you have questions, you can certainly ask us about those. You don't have to come through Open Lab to do that. We will be having those Open Lab sessions that I mentioned. We're holding 4 during the month of January. 3 are on Mondays, as you know if you're in Montpelier. The legislature is not in session on Mondays, so while the parking is still pretty terrible, it's slightly less terrible than when the legislators are here. So hopefully if you do want to come in, you'll be able to find parking to come along and spend some time with us. We did do one open lab the week of Martin Luther King Day. Monday obviously was a holiday for the state, so we did do an open lab on Friday then. So you'll have 2 open labs going towards that last week before go live. Again, if you have real questions about what you're doing or are struggling with something, feel free to come in. I encourage that you do. We'll be able to help you through that. You'll also see on this schedule, and I'll be sharing this in other formats as well, so don't worry about the fact that it's not particularly legible. You'll see that we're scheduling a number of live webinar sessions. These are our functionality or new functions in the system that we felt would benefit from you being able to ask questions in real time as we went through the process. So there's a number of those scheduled. And then we're also scheduling or creating a number of recorded webinars that we're not going to do live, but will be available for you to view and for especially for expense users to view if they need to see how to do the work they need to do. These will reside on the SovLink system, so anyone who wants to go in will be able to go in and access them and learn the things they need to do to use the system. We'll also be setting up registrations for the Open Lab sessions because there's 2 reasons we're doing that. One is we have limited space in this room. We have 16 terminals. So if 30 people decide to come in, a lot of you would be sitting around doing nothing, so we don't want that to happen. And also, we do need to let the security folks down at the front desk of this building know who's coming so that they can let you up to the third floor classroom. I do ask that if you're not, if you're questionable about whether you can make it to a lab session, please don't sign up so that the spaces are open for those that know they can come. And again, you can always call us and ask specific questions as you're going through the sandbox environment if you run into an issue. So, that's basically what we're planning for the training. Remember, this is an upgrade. Much of the functionality is going to look very similar to you. The screens might look a little bit different, but they work pretty much in similar ways, and there are some new functionalities in places where some places you need to do work changed where they are in the process, but it's fairly minor, and if you work in this system consistently, I think you'll get over the changes or through the changes pretty quickly. I don't anticipate it's going to be a problem for most of you. As usual, the people that get in the system only for expenses and only get in once every 6 months, they're always a challenge, but we have the support out there to help them through it, and also, we rely on our expense coordinators. We always do to help the folks that they work with get in and do things. And even that's not so dramatically different that it's going to be really difficult for people to figure out what they need to do to get their expenses reimbursed. I did have a question. I'm not familiar with the SovLink system. Does that require a login to the executive branch system? SovLink is a learning management system that the HR department runs. I believe we all are given logins to that when we start at the state. If not, I'll have a link out to it, and you can go to them and ask for or get an account set up so you can get in. That's something run by HR, and I'll make sure that I get a link out to everyone for that. Any other questions or comments about the training plans? At this point, as I said, we plan to have all the manuals updated and available, and in January you'll be able to get into the system and try it out. You'll have time to do that. Again, opportunities to ask your questions. Okay, not hearing any. And again, I would ask that if you haven't muted your phone, please do so. We're hearing some background noise. So that being said, we'll spend some time in the expense coordinator section. If you remember last time we went into the system live, I think that was the first time that we did that. And that was the welcoming screen is the one that I have up there now, but take a look, actually go into the system. So if you remember, when you go into version 9.2, you'll be able to sign in using your employee ID number or your division password. Either one will work. That will take care of all of the questions we always get with people who get confused between what the HR system and what our system asks for. So when you first sign in, you go to your home screen. You'll see these different tiles based on what access that you have to the system. In this particular case, this test user is only set up as an expense coordinator, so they have the travel and expense tile for their own travel and expenses if they have to do them, and they also have the tile for the expense coordinator work center. So when you click on the tile, it takes you to the expense coordinator work center. You'll see over on the left side, there's these what are called pagelets. There's actually two sets of them. There's the My Work and Links one, and if you click on Reports Queries, there are two more that are Queries and Reports. And these are the queries and reports and links that we feel are the most commonly used ones for expense coordinators, as I showed you in last month's webinar, and we'll do a webinar particularly about WorkCenter and how they work. In all of the pages except My Work, you can customize those, so if we didn't think that of something that you really would like to have access to on this page, you can always add those links or those queries and reports to those three different pagelets. As I said, you can't update your My Work section, but you can do it to the other ones. So if you look at the My Work section on the upper left side, you can see a bunch of counters on what's here. If you click on, for example, the expense report, it brings up a list of any expense reports that you might have out there. This list is a little tricky. If you have authorized user access to the particular user, in this case, Colin Davidson, who submitted this, you can click on this link and see it, but if you don't, you won't. So we don't recommend going into reports through this particular access, but it's a way to get a sense of what's out there quickly, where you can see all of this stuff in a format that's relatively easy to read. So if you did want to look at this transaction, we recommend you go down to Approved Transactions, click on Approved Transactions, and it'll bring up the transactions you have that you need to take action on. So in this case, you can see that there's a cash advance and an expense report. If you go on to Colin's expense report that he submitted for training in Burlington, you can click on the link, and it will take you to the expense report. If you, I'm going to shrink this down a little bit because you can't see the whole thing. Always the bad part about looking at it in a different computer, which has a big window. So if you look up here, there's a choose an action, and actually, sorry, this isn't very readable, but choose an action. So if you want to see expense details, you can go up here. If you click on expand all, it'll expand all the lines. You'll see the input here. If there was an attachment here, you would see that would have a number. You could click on that. If it was an expense that required a receipt, for example, it would be attached here. If they attached a flyer explaining what conference or training they went to, it would probably be attached here, and you could see that. You can look at the expense or the chart field that this has been charged to down here. So you can see all the details you need. If you want to go to choose an action, you can see the default accounting for the report. You can export it to Excel if you wanted to for some reason. So those are some different options there. So if they've changed their default accounting, you can go look at that. So if you go back to the summary, you'll see down at the bottom, you can see a track of who's approved this. It was submitted by Colin. It was approved by its supervisor, Ava Grace. And now it's with you as the expense coordinator. It's pooled, so there are other expense coordinators, if they're on this pool, that could approve this report as well. We're going to assume here you're just going to approve it, but you can approve it. You can send it back. If you send it back, you have to put a comment in. It goes back to the employee with a comment, just as it does today when you work in it today. So if we go ahead to click approve, it brings up a window that gives you the summary. The report will be approved. You click OK. And now you'll see it'll go back to your approved transactions window, and that expense report will be gone. It won't show up there anymore. So you can also go into, there's a work list link here. It's another way to get to things. This work list will bring up anything you have. So if you happen to work in GL or something else that has approvals you have to do, you'd see all the things that require action from you. But here you can see that cash advance shows up here too, and you can also click on this link here and get to it to do the same thing. So there's various ways to get to the work that you need to do. Anything else you think we should show in this, Ms. Ellen?
No, I think you covered it well.
So it worked, you're basically doing the same things you do today. It used to be called pre-audit. It's not called that anymore, and it works in the same way in many ways. As I said, the screens look a little bit different. But one nice thing is you don't have to open up that details box anymore. You can just expand all, and you get to see all the things that are associated with that expense. And I think the attachment piece is going to be really useful. And of course, for receipts in particular, you no longer have to have paper receipts trailing around in an envelope to make sure that they've got them. They're going to be attached to the expense reports going forward. So I think that's going to be a really big help for everyone.
One additional piece of functionality that we did do a customization for to help expense coordinators is currently today in 8.8, if an expense report is approved for payment by mistake, expense coordinators need to call finance and ask us to send the expense report back. Expense coordinators will now have that capability in 9.2 to do that themselves. They'll be able to get into an expense report that has already been approved for payment and send it back on their own. So that'll help expense coordinators and not have to involve finance in that step. So I think previously we talked a little bit too, in lists that went out of new functionality, but one of the big things I think departments will enjoy is now in 9.2, when an expense report or any expense transaction is submitted, The accounting date is the submission date. So at month end, there will be no need to delete expense reports, travel authorizations, cash advances that are still in process and not approved yet at month end. These reports and transactions can be sent back, and then when they're resubmitted, the accounting date will be in the new month. So there's no reason to have to delete those and have employees have to re-enter them. They just need to be sent back so that they're no longer in the current month or in the month just closed, and then when they're resubmitted, they will be in the new month.
I did get another question. The question is the sandbox environment going to be in Sandbox 1 or Sandbox 2 or a separate 9.2 sandbox? It will be a separate 9.2 sandbox. So we'll be sure to send out that link as soon as it's available. It'll also be posted on our project website as part of the financial website. So any other questions, comments, concerns about where the project is now? Questions about training plans or anything else? Remember to turn on your phone if it's muted if you have one. You guys are always an easy group. I've worked on other projects where we get bombarded with questions. You guys are easy. Certainly, if you have questions or think of something later, always feel free to drop an email either to our website or to me directly, and we'll be sure to get an answer back to you. I'm not sure at this point if I'm going to schedule a January RCN meeting because we'll be in the middle of the training and open lab project, but if I do, I'll certainly get one out. And certainly if anything changes with Go Live date or training plans, and those training plans are subject to change. Those are our best estimate now. We may find something else we want to add or change. But if we do that, we'll let you know, and I'll be posting all of those to the website either today or over the weekend. So by early next week, they'll be available for anyone to see, and you can certainly feel free to share those with anyone that you work with. So with that, if there are no further questions, thank you again for joining in, and we'll be talking to you soon. You'll be hearing a lot more from us about crossover plans, dates that you have to do things by, and all of that will be coming soon too. All right, well, thank you and have a happy holiday season, and we'll be talking to you soon. Bye.